We are on with Jesse Zhong. This is episode 144. Jesse, how's it going?
Good,
to
how
see
are
you.
you?
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, of course. It's an honor to be here.
Excited to talk to Gilman's resident weather forecaster, and it's perfect conditions outside for this podcast.
Yeah, it is perfect.
What's happening out there?
So this is my first day. I gave a 1 out of 10 on my weather forecast because it is raining really hard all day. So we might get like several inches of rain, and there's gonna be really heavy winds. So it's just not a good day to be out.
One of my students from Roland Park emailed me before third period and said, "Mr. Scott, this weather is ridiculous. Can we have asynchronous learning today?" And I said, "Grab an umbrella. What do you think about that?"
I mean, I would just say just brave the rain. It's like I walked to Bryn Mawr today during third period without any umbrella. So, I mean, I didn't really complain about it. It's just like rain. I would just say get an umbrella, just walk over.
But we are canceling some after school stuff, right?
Yeah, we are canceling some after school stuff. And honestly, I wasn't like thinking that schools would, but I think it is like a good safety precaution. I guess just so like we don't get like any sort of like injuries on the fields, and you can't play on the fields at all.
Yeah, that's true. And a couple of my students said they were slipping a little bit walking over, so
Yeah,
I guess it is slippery out.
and the floods too. So like I guess driving on the roads, if you like run into like a valley or like an alley where there's like lots of water, like that's not really safe either.
Yeah, the driving is pretty tough. I was driving through some snow this past weekend, and it was
Yeah.
honestly, it was scary.
Yeah,
It's
that can be tough.
it's not a good time to be on the roads.
Hmm.
So Jesse, how did you get into weather? Like, where did this passion come from for
Yeah.
you?
So I would say it started out when I was very young. I was in second grade, and I remember this time when it was just me and my mom at home, and then like I tuned on to the Weather Channel for like the first time ever. And like that year, we got like lots of snow, and I just kept like tuning on more and more because I loved how like they had these like cool maps of like the satellite imagery and like the jet stream, and that was really interesting to me, like how things looked on satellite and like how the storms looked on like radar. It was really cool and looked really nice to me. So I wanted to like learn more about how that happened. And I also loved snow from like a very young age, so that sort of drew me into meteorology and learning more about it.
So when you predict the weather for the week, are you basically just kind of looking at the online stuff that's already established, or are you doing anything additional to that?
Yeah, so most people they just look at the weather app, but I use like what we call numerical forecast models, and these are models that most meteorologists use, and they have like several. They're like computers that basically predict the weather, and you can go online and search them up at like certain sites. But a lot of meteorologists use these complex computer systems to help predict the weather, and sometimes people use like a few models, and some like use all sorts of models to help predict the weather. So I would I if I was like if I had lots of time, I would probably like go online and look up the American model, and then they have like a European model and like a Canadian model because those are like where the models were made, and they all predict the weather, and they typically don't agree with each other, but as a meteorologist, like that's something that I do in my free time.
So what is your ideal weather? Is it the spring? Like, what's your ideal season? Is it the spring?
Winter.
Is it the sun? Is it winter?
Yeah,
Really?
I love snow.
Huh. Do you like to ski? Is there any reason why you like snow and the cold?
Well, I just love the feeling of seeing snowflakes falling. It just looks so
Mm-hmm.
aesthetically pleasing.
That's
And
true.
it's not even just skiing. I'm not even good at skiing. But like I love sledding in snow. And I love just walking in snow and just like sipping a mug of hot chocolate and looking outside and just like humongous flakes falling out. And that's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I don't like being out there in the freezing cold, but I do like
Yeah.
the snow.
Yeah.
If there's somewhere where you would want to live, and I'm sure you've had this question with, college and thinking about where you want to go to college, if you could live somewhere in the world, maybe in the United States or the world, where do you think you would want to live for weather, for just the weather?
I'll live in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Whoa.
I actually like yeah, I sometimes like do think about where I would want to live, and like I've always imagined myself in like Massachusetts near the Boston area where they get like tons of snow each winter.
Yeah.
And it just seems like so much fun to just live there and like get like 20 inches of snow and not be like and that have that be like a normality.
Yeah.
And also like just west of Boston where to get more snow than inside the city. So that's like my perfect like paradise.
Well, that's why I kind of laughed at this email from one of my students. I know it is slippery and it is, it's wet outside and
Yeah.
it could be dangerous to drive, but walking to class, this is like a daily, if you go to school in Boston, this is like a daily occurrence
Yeah,
there.
it is.
Gray skies and rain and chilly.
Yeah.
So Jesse, let's talk a little bit about senior year. All right, you're coming up about halfway. It's
Yeah.
second semester almost. How are you feeling right now in senior year?
It's been a very busy senior year, but I feel happy with how everything went, and I'm really grateful for like this whole experience, even though it's been challenging at times. And I'm looking forward to like in the second semester focusing on forming like relationships with friends and like really like getting to like hang out with people, and that's really something I want to focus a lot more on.
Yeah,
second
that's
semester.
good because a lot of times, in high school, I remember high school being so busy with all the schoolwork. I had a job in high school and sports and all these things happening. Sometimes you forget that it's, to make
Share
new
some
connections,
relationships.
meet some more people, that you otherwise might not sit down with at lunch and whatnot. So I think second semester, that's a good time for all that.
Yeah, it is.
What's the college process been like for you? Has it been stressful?
It has been stressful at times, but I think that can be said for basically anyone. But there have been like times where I always have, there have been times where I've had like a lot of emotional swings. Like sometimes I feel really confident in what I'm doing, and sometimes I like feel insecure or doubtful. But in the end, I feel like I've been able to like adapt to those kind of feelings and sort of be able to navigate myself out of that. And that's something that I think this college process has taught me. It's like adaptability.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting you said insecure. Why that word? Why insecure?
Like a lot of people, a lot of students, like sometimes if you're like writing essays, like the college process is sometimes quite ambiguous and you don't really know what is like right or wrong.
Right.
And some people like you might like show your essays to a ton of people and they might all give you different opinions. So that's like that sort of uncertainty of what exactly you need to get into like your dream school. Like that sort of causes a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people, not just me. So
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm giving my students right now, my junior English students, some of the Chicago essay prompts. Did you apply to Chicago by
I
chance?
didn't, but I did see the prompts. They were pretty creative.
They're very creative. They're very open-ended. One of them, so I have 7 on the list. One of them is find X.
Yeah,
You've seen that one?
I've heard about it.
There's another one that's, chess and I forget what the other sport is, but chess is a game that's been around since, the ancient times. What modern game do you think will outlast the test of time? Another one is dogs and cats, Great Gatsby, Catcher in the Rye, righties and lefties. There are 2 types of people in the world. What are they? And you have to come up with that, what 2 types of people. One of them is if you stumbled upon a group of Martians, what would you show them so that they would have faith in humanity? Either a video or a song or a piece of art. And they're very difficult questions,
difficult.
but I think it's important for at least junior year to start thinking about, how to craft an essay that's open-ended. They're all asking me clarifying questions like, what does this mean? What do you mean find X? What are you talking about? And I'm like, I don't even know, right? This is the prompt from
Yeah.
U Chicago.
Yeah.
How are you going to answer it? It's really tough.
It is really tough at times. And they're also quite philosophical too.
Right, and you could take the essay in any direction that you want. And I think the trick is, and you've probably heard this a million times right now,
Be yourself.
Be yourself, right?
Yeah.
And offer who you are to the college admissions person. And only 650 words, right? That's the usual length of an essay,
Yeah, a Common App essay, 650 words.
which is harder sometimes than write me 2,000 words, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to boil it down. You got to cross things out. You
Yeah,
got to
exactly.
figure out the right word for certain responses. What do you think has been the most challenging part of this process for you? The essay part, or has it been? I know you're a stellar student, right? And you do really well academically, and I'm sure you did well on your test scores. But the essays it's that piece that is sort of open-ended and probably the most challenging, I would guess.
I think essays are definitely challenging, but like when I think about the essay process, I don't look at it as if like, oh, I hate it. I kind of, the first reaction, my reaction to essays is actually like, I really enjoyed writing them.
Yeah.
Like if I'm in a good mood, you can ask me, how do you think of college essays? And I'll be like, well, I think I've gotten to know myself a lot more through this process.
Yeah.
So even though it can be challenging, I think that for me, like overall, I think the essays like were a pretty like rewarding process. And maybe what was the most challenging part of the college admissions process, I would say maybe like during those times when you just finished like a whole draft of essays and you just realize you have to like redo it, or like one of those times when you're like struggling to come up with like new ideas. I think that could be like one of the biggest challenges in the college admissions process.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a difficult part of the process. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around like how a student, if you want to go to one of these top colleges, what pieces have to combine it's so competitive,
It
it's
is,
it's a
yeah.
tough process. So I know that you did a summer this past summer in out west.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about that because I don't know if we actually recapped what that experience was
Yeah.
all about and what it was like for you.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. So I went to Yellowstone National Park, which is really famous. It was established in 1872. But I went there for, not to visit, I went there for a program called a Youth Conservation Corps. And what we did was we were like a group of 24 teenagers from all corners of the US. So I was with like random like farmers from Idaho, or like some people, there were a lot of people from like Virginia. So like all corners of the US, we came together to Yellowstone and we did like conservation work. So we did work like trail work, building bear boxes or replacing trails, replacing boardwalks, tracking how visitors use Yellowstone, and of course wearing like a special type of uniform. So we looked kind of fancy in those uniforms, but it was just like your sort of physical work that you did Yellowstone out in the wild.
And where'd you live when you were out there?
So we actually during the week we went on what we call spikes, and these are sort of your like mission projects that like you could think of like the military to give you like projects. We call them spikes, and we would go to some place in Yellowstone for one whole week, and we would sleep in tents for 4 nights straight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Have you ever done that before, sleep in a tent?
I've slept in a tent before, but not for 4 nights straight.
Yeah. How was that?
It was rough.
Yeah.
The first time I did it was quite rough. Like our first project was out in the backcountry with no water, just a river next to us. So and there were tons of mosquitoes, so it was not comfortable at all.
Yeah.
It was challenging.
It's fun. I did that. One of my friends lives out in Montana, and he's doing something pretty similar. He's doing some construction out in
Yeah.
Montana, and he loves it. I mean, I think he's conflicted about it though because he's such a nature lover like you, But some of these really nice natural areas of the U.S. are people want to move there, right? And they've got to build
Yeah.
houses, and they've got to build, which is sort of sad. And Big Sky, Montana is one of those
Yeah.
places. Like it's a big ski town, and
Yeah.
you see. I mean, you could walk down the street and you'll see construction all over the place.
Yeah.
Which, it's great, but it's also this is natural
Yeah.
territory too.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say conservation, especially even at Yellowstone, like we get so many tourists each year, and I can tell like we have like hotels and like certain tourist attractions next to like a hot spring. There are like tons of people and parking lots, and like all that sort of infrastructure is like right next to this like natural wonder that's been carved by millions of years. And although like we are getting more people to come visit and see the wonderful Mother Nature for themselves, it is like there is the drawback that yes, we are sort of also at the same time we're like sort of degrading it as well. So it's like pros and cons to that.
Right. Double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Did you see any animals when you were out there?
Oh yes, we did. We saw bears. We did not see wolves, but I know some people did. We saw bison, lots of bison. So out in the valley in the northern part of the park, we saw like herds of bison, probably up to like 1,000, just grazing across the meadows. So we saw lots of bison. We saw some elk too. We even surveyed a dead elk.
Oh. Any bear?
Yeah, I said we saw both black and grizzly bears.
Okay.
And What else?
From afar or not close to you?
Both.
Really?
So when we were driving like in our van, we did see some bears that were maybe 30 feet away. But most of the time, when we saw bears, they were quite far out. So like I would say at least 300 yards away. So you had to use like binoculars to see them.
Is it the brown? Which one is more dangerous, the brown or the black bear?
It's a grizzly bear.
The grizzly bear.
Yeah.
And you need, I mean, I don't think bear spray does much for you, does it?
And we do use bear spray. I think it helps. We never had any scenario where we really needed to use it. It was just more like as a safety precaution, just in case like a bear would charge at us. But like that never happened. It was usually, the bears were usually really far away, so we didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I always think, you ever see the movie Revenant when Leonardo DiCaprio gets attacked by a
haven't seen
bear?
that yet.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But that movie, you know, it makes you terrified of seeing a bear out in the wild. Those things are ferocious.
Yeah.
All right, great. So what do you think? What do you think's next for you? What are you taking this semester? I know you're looking forward to meeting some new people in your grade and at Gilman in the semester coming up here. But what classes are you taking? What are you really liking this year academically here?
So this year I'm taking, so I took James Joyce for my first semester English class, and I'm taking postmodern literature for my second semester with Mr. Hastings. And I think James Joyce is like he's a really interesting author, so it's been like a very interesting course reading his novels, especially Ulysses. It's been a really interesting novel.
How much did you read of Ulysses?
We didn't actually read much of it. We kind of took some sections and sort of read a bit. So I would say we read a good part of the first half, and then we kind of skipped the second half.
Gotcha. That's when it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
Circe and...
But his books are really hard to decipher, and what Mr. Hastings says, like he likes to say that like each like passage is like a puzzle where you don't really know what's going on, but every time you read over it, you sort of get like, aha, here's like a detail that belongs to this.
Yep.
Or like he's talking about this, something like in Shakespeare or Macbeth, or like some reference that you probably don't know, but if you reread it, you might understand it.
Did you use the guide, Patrick Hastings' guide to Ulysses, as another book to read alongside with it, or no?
He did recommend it to us. I did use it a bit, but not really.
Yeah. He's if you're going to take a Ulysses class with anyone, it's him, you know. He's like the expert.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So would you recommend Ulysses to other people who haven't read the book?
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's a really interesting book if they're up for a challenge.
Yeah.
I would say it's a really interesting book and rewarding book.
Now, did you read any of the Dubliners short stories too?
Yes, we read those first, and we read those. We spent more time on those actually. So
Okay.
we actually read every single Dubliner story.
Oh, wow. What was your favorite, or which one did you like among, I don't know how many there are in there.
There are like I think at least 15. I can't remember exactly, but my favorites were Araby and Evelyn.
Yeah, those are mine too.
Yeah.
I like Evelyn a lot.
Yeah, that one's a cliffhanger at the end.
Because you don't really know what happens with her, right?
Yeah, you don't really know.
When she, does she get on the boat, right? Does she get on the boat? Yeah.
I don't think she goes on a boat, but in the end, like Frank gets on a boat, and then
Yeah,
she
Frank.
just stands there undecided.
Mm-hmm. You don't know if she joins him or not, right?
Yeah, we don't know, and the story ends right there, so we don't know what happens next.
Oh, I haven't read it in a while, but that's one of my favorite,
Yeah.
Evelyn. Yeah. And you read The Dead?
Yeah, we did read that.
That's a longer one, but that's probably the most famous of the Dubliners stories.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it, but that was one of the longer ones at the end.
I'm thinking this summer I'm in a master's program through Middlebury called Breadloaf, and Mr. Hastings did the same program. It's a master's in English, and they offer Oxford as one of the campuses that you can go to for a summer. So I'm thinking about taking a Ulysses course over at Oxford this summer, which would be really cool.
Yeah.
So when I get there, if I get there and start reading Ulysses, I'll have to get some feedback from you, get some more points.
Yeah.
So what else are you interested in this year? What else are you doing to occupy your time this semester?
You mean class-wise?
Yeah.
I would say I'm taking like pretty standard classes, like AP classes, like I'm taking AP physics, statistics, multivariable calculus, like your pretty standard heavy math classes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not that fun, but like they're just like your standard classes, and AP Spanish too.
Okay.
And as an elective, I'm taking environmental science.
Gotcha. So I know you're also involved in Gilman News.
Yeah.
And that's been going well. I mean, you guys are doing a really good job with the
Mm-hmm.
Gilman News. It seems like it's improved, from there's more writing in there, but it also is more aesthetically pleasing to open that
Yeah.
newspaper up every time.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you guys doing in there that's, you're making a lot of leaps, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
in the production of this.
Yeah, so I mean during Gilman News sessions in the pub lab, we do like a lot of talking and decision making about and brainstorming ideas about what to write. And a lot of that it's like Zach, he's leading us, and we're like in a tight knit room, and we're all like brainstorming ideas about what students might want to read. So that's definitely like one of the big things that goes on in a newsroom. We had like 20 kids packed in this really small room and then a whiteboard, and then we just sort of brainstorm ideas and brainstorm article ideas and try not to repeat them and find unique angles at looking at different sort of things that are going on here at Gilman and even outside of Gilman.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you want to be involved in something like this in the future, maybe at college or?
Yeah, I would definitely consider it. It was definitely, I think my favorite part about Gilman News is just like being around people who are so intellectually engaged with the world around them.
Right.
And that's maybe in college. I know that I love reading articles about climate change and meteorology from like the Washington Post. So that's something I definitely am open to.
Do you know what you might want to do? Like, do you want to be in that world? Do you want to do computer science in college? Do you want to do econ? Do you know like kind of what you want to do? I know some people do. I didn't really know when I was leaving high school, but
I'm sort of leaning towards like doing something in environmental science or sort of like helping combat climate change.
mm-hmm.
Probably like research to help combat climate change or like research in meteorology, which is a field I really like. So something in that area, I think, is what I'm leaning towards now.
Love it. That sounds good. All right, Jesse. Well, let's get to your book rec.
Oh yeah.
What do you have for us?
So my book that I'm recommending is Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer.
Okay.
I read this book over my time at Yellowstone, and it's a book about a man, and he's sort of recounting his experience he's a journalist, but he's recounting his experience on a hiking expedition to Everest, and how at the very top of the mountain, there was a humongous sort of unexpected storm that threw a lot of people off guard, and sort of recounting the disaster that happened after that. So it's like sort of adventurous book about Everest and its dangers. So
You've got to be pretty crazy to want to
Yeah.
climb Everest, right?
yeah, you got to be pretty crazy.
Is that on your bucket list?
No.
No? I remember reading this book. Is there a movie too, maybe? Or is that's Into the Wild that he also wrote?
I'm not sure, but I know the book is pretty famous.
And you liked it?
I loved it.
Yeah. I'm surprised this is the first time someone's recommended Krakauer because he's pretty famous. He's written Into the Wild, Into Thin Air. I think he's got a new one out. Wow, that's a good read, especially where you were to
Yeah.
think about that kind of stuff. All right, great, thank you. Now, do you read much in your free time? Do you have a lot of, is there time really during the school year for you?
Well, I haven't really read much outside of school in like the last couple of years since I've been kind of busy, but that's something that's on my bucket list is to read more books, because books are really helpful in developing writing skills. And also like I know a lot of people are on phones these days and on social media. Something I'm hoping I can work on is maybe try to tone that down a bit and focus on reading.
Nice. Do you have any ones on your list upcoming, or I guess you're pretty busy right now in school?
I haven't really thought about it yet, but
Yeah.
I'll definitely think about it.
Well, what's your favorite book that you've read in school? Like what, we probably had 5 or 6 books that we read last year, but just in your time at Gilman, what have you enjoyed reading?
That's a good question. I don't really have like a favorite on my mind right now.
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I like Never Let Me Go. I think we read that in 9th grade because I feel like I could relate to that book in some ways.
Huh.
But I think a lot of the books we read, like Underground Railroad or As I Lay Dying, those were all really interesting books that I've enjoyed. And
Yeah, you read As I Lay Dying last year. That was a tough one.
yeah, that was a tough book.
At the end of the year. I was glad that you chose that. All right, Jesse. Well, I appreciate you coming in. Let me ask you, of the people in your grade, the seniors, and one thing that I want to do in the second semester is have some more students,
Yeah.
some more seniors, because I think it's kind of cool to, reflect on your senior year a little bit and reflect on your time at Gilman. How long have you been at Gilman?
I've been here since 7th grade.
7th grade. Are there other seniors that you would like to hear from on the podcast, and who you think I should have in to have discussions like this?
I think Jamie Howard and Zachary Minkin, they can definitely have really good discussions about their time at Gilman.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great guys. They run the show in Model UN.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed with them.
Yeah.
Great. Well, anything else that you want to cover today? Anything else you want to talk about as it's going fast. Gilman is almost over. You got one more semester, which is great.
Yeah, time's been flying by recently, and I think this second semester is really where I want to sort of reflect on my time at Gilman and make it really end on a strong note. And yeah, it's been a great experience in these past 5 years, especially transitioning from a public school to Gilman. I think Gilman's a really tight-knit community, and I'll forever remember this place.
Love it. Well, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. And
Yeah, of course.
best of luck this semester.
Thank you.